Action, assertion, aggression, libido are all the things that we typically associate with Mars. So essentially, this is your masculine nature. If Venus would represent what your desires are, then Mars would represent how you go about getting those desires. So, one thing that's interesting about Mars is that because it's your assertion, it is how you go about asserting your boundaries. You want to look at Mars to see if you have a healthy relationship with asserting yourself. Of course, Mars does well in fire signs. I remember I had a good friend that was like, I really believe in the astrology stuff, but the thing that just doesn't make sense is that I'm a Sagittarius and everything about me is very Sagittarian, but I just don't have the anger that they say that Sagittarius people have. I was like, okay, well, we should look in your chart and look at your Mars. And her Mars was in Cancer. That's like taking your fire nature and sticking it in a bucket of water. So those are interesting things that you want to look at. You want to see if your Mars is what element it's in and also what house it's in. And then you can see where your assertive nature is oriented towards. Sometimes people just really don't understand why somebody has such an angry streak. And then on the other side, people don't understand why some people are just not able to assert themselves at all. Those are the kind of things that you can find with your Mars. The more negative aspects that you have on your Mars towards other planets, the more that your Mars will sort of be inhibited or will be expressed in these sort of ways that you have to learn to integrate. Versus if you have positive aspects, trines, sextiles, those are the places where your Mars will easily be able to assert its energy. Like I was talking about, some interesting ones are Mars and water signs, specifically Mars in Cancer or Pisces. It actually does relatively well in Scorpio. Having Mars in Earth signs is a really good strength because then you take the assertion and it becomes very practical and more grounded. Having Mars in air sign, you get the debaters and the people who can really play ball and assert themselves in wit and conversation and logic. Having Mars in water is not necessarily a bad thing because it can be very protective and it can be emotional and it can be covert, but those aren't necessarily bad things because at times life is going to need your assertion to be covert, you know? If you feel like you're the type of person who has a hard time getting up and going and getting things done, then you might want to look at your Mars and see if it has negative aspects or if it's in a strange place, like in the seventh house. That's one thing that's very interesting when you look at certain people's Mars. If they fall in the seventh house, the anger then becomes this external thing where they're confused why other people are mad at them quite often. The same thing can sort of happen if your Mars is in the eighth house. And also if your Mars is in the 12th house, then it becomes this whole thing where the anger is unconscious and comes out in unconscious type of ways. And then, of course, the healthier things are Mars in the first, Mars in the fifth, Mars in the ninth, having a positive relationship, sextiles, trines between Mars and Venus. A lot of people who have very healthy expressions of Mars, athletes. You could have Mars in Aquarius and be wrestling crocodiles like Steve Irwin. But if you know some people that are very assertive, very strong willed, take a look at their Mars and you will absolutely find out why.